The extraction and processing of critical raw materials in Central Asia presents significant environmental challenges, from ecosystem degradation to carbon-intensive operations.
By integrating technological, regulatory and economic perspectives, the session aims to bridge gaps between risk assessment and actionable mitigation, fostering resilient resource development in Central Asia and beyond.
Join us for a nuanced discussion on the future of mining in a circular and interdependent world.
Okay, thank you everybody for returning after your well-earned tea break. I've got some excellent speakers lined up, and we'll move from each speaker into a panel session once each speaker's made their presentation. First up and online is Galvira. She has 22 years experience of legislative activities, including 18 years in Parliament, and has now been in business for over 5 years. She has a master's degree in international law and is recipient of many awards for her contribution to legislative activities in Kazakhstan. So first of all, over to you, Galvira. Thank you.
So good afternoon or good evening to all participants. First of all, I would like to wish to all participants to have a fruitful and good collaboration and to have new professional insights. And as for organizers, I would like as well to say my gratitude for organizing and for giving me an opportunity to be a speaker on this very good and significant event. So as for me, my name is Gulvira Shaymerdinova. I'm from Kazakhstan. I'm presenting company Carmed. My position in company is director of GR department. And as for this event, I prepared a presentation, and the relevance for this topic, I think, is very important now. And my presentation, I called How to Turn Waste into Profit in the Mining and Metallurgical Sector. Next slide, please. So what is the relevance of this topic? The current situation regarding production of waste management in Kazakhstan includes the volume of waste generated and statistics. In line with the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by global leaders in 2015, countries strive to improve waste management system and reuse waste as secondary raw materials. Please, next slide. And as for Kazakhstan, as I have mentioned before, the mining and metallurgy complex is the backbone of industry. Steel, ferroalloys, copper, coal, and other different types of industrial waste all create a gigantic production chain and generating enormous volumes of waste. And as you can see at this slide, that annually Kazakhstan generates around 1 billion tons of industrial waste, and the country has accumulated for today approximately about 42 billion tons of industrial waste. And most of them, they are mainly technogenic mineral formations, including overburden and slags and manufacturing industry waste. So according to this slide, you can see that the volume of recycling industrial waste is low, and the waste generation rate is only 3 and 5% per year. And at the same time, the volumes of industrial waste processing are very low. The problem of industrial waste generation cannot be ignored, as it primarily involves environmental risk and that threatens the national security of the country where management is carried. Please, the next slide. So I divided my presentation into two parts. So first part is devoted to main problems and challenges that we deal in MMC waste recycling. And I would like just to identify the most main. And the first is deterioration of the environmental situation. Deterioration of environmental situation includes social environmental risks, toxic elements, the need for land reclamation, risks of dam and tailing storage facility breaches and dusting, depletion of natural resources. Next, please. As for the main problem that we deal in regulating waste recycling system, it can be identified like legal options. And legal obstacles, it can be said without exaggeration that certain legal aspects in the judicial terminology of production waste management cannot impede business processes. Furthermore, there is a problem defining in the term waste in international legal doctrine. Attempts to define waste in the main fundamental strategic document, Basel Convention, have not resolved this issue due to various interpretation, which affects the regulation of waste in the national legal system. Next, please, slide. So I think you will agree that the important problem, it could be identified like a lack of methodology and scientific components. As for me, I can tell that approaches to the concept of waste have been formed in at the legislative level during law enforcement practice and developed by the doctrine of environmental law. But as for methodology and systematic investigation and effective regulation, it should be account not only for environmental science, but also for technical, economic, and other factors. So it should be investigated through different scientific approach, not only just through environmental science. Next, please, slide. So economic barriers, they are also very important, and low placement tariffs, lack of incentives for waste processing, high capex for processing equipment, unstable secondary product market, and difficulty in calculating economic effect. It is also a very important and identified as a great barrier in good waste recycling. Next slide, please. So technological limitations, outdated local technologies, lack of deep processing for tailings, and the shortage of laboratories, analytical data on waste composition, they are also can make some challenges in very effective and good regulation and recycling system. Please, next slide. Organizational and logistical barriers as well. So waste is scattered across sites, varied fractions, moisture contaminations, and the lack of a unified sorting and preparation scheme. Next slide, please. And the factor of unsuitability of certain resources, as many waste contain iron, copper, silica, lime, and rare earth metals that are not that remain unutilized. So please, next slide. This is the first part. I just tried to, I can tell it could be maybe more than these challenges and the problems I have identified, but I just tried to point out the most important. And the second part of my presentation is devoted to practical implementation of industrial waste recycling. And I can tell that to all these problems, they are the same decision. If we can say, as for more effective and good approach, and I'm not telling something new, Everybody knows that only comprehensive approach combining economic, legal mechanisms, they are recognized as the most effective and evidenced by the successful experience of countries with developed recycling system. Please, next slide. So as for all this problem, we said that legislative options and not effective legislative regulations. So, and as the response for this legislative support we need. So this is the foundation of success. And in this situation, I would like again to to return to the question I posed in the title of my presentation: how to turn production waste into benefit. So legislative support is a very important in this case, and it's the foundation for the subsequent effective processing of mining waste and secondary raw materials. And in this framework, I think I can tell that key reform is very important. A portion of waste is transitioned to the category of secondary raw materials, meaning certain waste are recognized as secondary raw materials. And in this regard, I can tell that one method for solving this problem in Kazakhstan to address new challenges was the new environmental policy that we have in Kazakhstan, and in 2021, environmental code, new law had been accepted, and which provides for transitioning to integrated environmental permits with the condition of implementing best available techniques, increasing the fee for waste disposal, limiting waste accumulation, strengthening the responsibility of environmental users for polluting natural components. And in this case, still we have some problematic aspects despite the fact of new environmental policy. So that's why still we have the need for detailed regulation of the concepts of production waste and the technogenic mineral formations. So these terms in new environmental law, they are not enough regulated, and that's why we need to develop this regulation. And so as for the concept of production waste and mineral secondary raw materials, so all of them must reflect all stages of production in which they are formed, and it is necessary to determine at which stage in the production process waste transitions into a secondary resource. It's very important because only with this legal approach we can develop and be able to know transparent rules of dealing with the process of recycling industrial waste. Next slide, please. So again, problems, economic barriers, and the response for this: practical implementation, economic instruments, applications of subsidies and environmental fees. The state should stimulate recyclers and provide them tax relief for recycling secondary raw materials and grants for innovation. I think it's possible, and of course they could be they should be regulated as well on the level of national legislation. Please, next slide. So as for corporate strategy, I think it's a very good option and effective. Only when companies have a clear economic model for recycling their waste and expanded sale markets, they would be able to know exactly in what direction they are going. And a good option for corporate strategy, I think it's an injection of loan investments to implement the newest available technologies in waste recycling, and it should be productive as well. Next slide, please. The technological solutions. Again, I think this option should be indicated in company strategies, but technological solutions are very important. And moreover, like new technologies, the using of new technologies was implemented in a new environmental policy, and like a practical implementation of industrial waste recycling. It could be identified like a response for in comprehensive approach with the rest of practical instruments that I have mentioned. So that's why we should know what can be recycled. Metallurgy slugs, enrichment, tailings, gas cleaning, sludges, ash, and gas cleaning dust, carbon containing waste. So this is a list of some special waste should be identified in the whole strategy of the company. So next slide, please. So as for legal framework, in this case, I would like to demonstrate a very good and positive and effective case that we already have solved in Kazakhstan, like a response for legal regulation and for multiplicative effects that we can make in the system of recycling waste management. A case of successful waste processing had been implemented into our new in subsoil code, and according to these amendments, the subsoil users they are encouraged to have investments in mineral resource processing, and according to these amendments, government is authorized to conclude an agreement on the processes of solid minerals with investors, offering preferences and legislative stability, including tax stability. This is a very great victory for us. Why? Because the legislative stability, including tax stability, it will help us to realize our investment projects and to be effective in this process. And I think that resuming even already 30 years of law enforcement and legislative practice and activity, and especially my participation in this process, I can tell that it's a great progress for us. When our government supports business and natural users in making and supporting the implementation amendments that can afford to realize this production waste processing policy. And as I said, I can proudly say that our collaboration with business structures, Kazakhstan Business Chamber, so we managed to convince the deputies and the government to support proposals aimed in stimulating investment projects in the field of processing solid minerals within the framework of existing subsoil use contracts. So, moreover, the main achievement was that within the framework of the agreements on solid mineral processing, which will be approved by a government resolution, the provision of preferences and the ensuring of legislative stability are foreseen, as I said. So I think it will be, we believe that we will have a successful implementation of these amendments, and we are expecting that at the end of this year, the head of our country, the president of Kazakhstan, will sign these amendments and this law And at the end of the year, I think we will have already this good progress and result. Next slide, please. So as a result of this effective and good case, and as well our effective collaboration with government and parliament, our company Karmet and another big company, Kazakhmys, as flagships of mining sector, will begin the implementation of large-scale solid mineral processing projects at the beginning of next year. These projects will involve the modernization, expansion, and reconstruction of existing production, utilizing the latest technologies and modern methods of field development. It should be noted that the anticipated investment volume is over $500 million. Thus, this jointly developed approach by the state in supporting and developing a strategically important industry will yield a multiplicative effect. So not only for us, like for business representatives, but for the state as well. So please, next slide. This is all benefits of industrial waste processing that we expect from these two projects. And first, I think modernization eliminates the risk of accidents and violations in the field of industrial safety, since safe working conditions are very important for us. Secondly, the implementation of our projects will create favorable conditions for the development of small and medium-sized businesses, which will also have a positive effect on all sectors of the economy. This means, as it was presented at this slide, tax revenues, growth in productivity and quality, and the reduction in the cost of goods, works, and services. It also strengthens the competitiveness of company products in the global arena. And of course, modernization will lead to reduction in the negative impact on the environmental, improvement of the quality of life and health of the population. And technical factors as well, because new production capacities, they will enhance and ensure the effective launch and of new production capacities with this synchronization of existing facilities. So all these expected results from the implementation of these projects, as for our company, two companies in Karmet and two companies in Kazakhmys, which they form the country's GDP, not only in the region, but for the country as a whole. So please, next slide. As for new initiatives for approaches to regulating production of waste, processing issues, I would like to demonstrate in this regard case, and they were born from my enforcement activities. One of the recent cases that we resolved jointly with the Eurasia company. It concerns the transboundary shipment of granulated and aluminium slags. It should be noted that these types of ferrous and non-ferrous metallurgy products are in very high demand, not only domestically, but also abroad. Two companies from Uzbekistan requested to purchase granulated slag, and we, company Karmet, as a socially responsible enterprise, want to sell it and free up territories from waste, primarily solving the environmental issue. Our neighbors, Kyrgyzstan, are also showing interest in importing aluminium slag from Kazakhstan. It must be said that the current mechanism for regulating the transboundary shipment of these types of slags is problematic for our companies. So I said, this case we deal company Karmet and the ERG company. Granulated and aluminium slags are absent from the waste classifier, which determines their classification as hazardous and no hazardous types, which is quite logical. Aluminium and granulated slugs are secondary raw materials. They have corresponding product quality certificates and laboratory tests have been conducted. However, in the unified list of goods subject to import prohibition into the customs territory of Eurasian Economic Union, export from the customs territory on the Eurasian Economic Union as well, granulated slag and aluminium slag are defined as hazardous waste. Because there is no other list for third countries, government resolution of Kazakhstan number 135 stipulates that the provisions of the Basel Convention and the aforementioned unified list of goods of Eurasian list apply to regulating the import into, export from, and transit the hazardous and other waste through the territory of the Republic of Kazakhstan. So it is necessary to say that in these regulations, in my opinion, it should be regulated based on the main important fundamental strategic document, Basel Convention. So the Basel Convention on the control of transboundary movements, do not identify aluminium slag and granulated slags as waste, and they do not contain hazardous substances and do not possess its properties, characteristics, or weight is mentioned according to this document. Thus, it can be said that the United List of Goods according to Eurasian Agreement, subject to prohibitions or restrictions on import or export by the member states of the customs union within the Eurasian Economic Community in trade with third countries, does not correspond to the provisions of the Basel Convention. So in this regard, it is unfair to apply the aforementioned unified list of goods to countries that are not members of the Eurasian Economic Agreement, as they do not fall under the jurisdiction of the treaty on the Eurasian Economic Union. So as a result, I can tell that despite the fact that Kyrgyzstan is a member of this agreement, their transportation of aluminium slag has failed. And as for Uzbekistan, this country is not a party of international agreement, and thus we are dealing with the problem of transboundary regulation. So, this case demonstrates the necessity of making and improvements our legislation, not only inside of the country, but inside of the countries of Eurasian territory. So we need to make some harmonization that will be able to take away all this barrier. And I think these two cases clearly demonstrated problems not only in legal regulations, but also in the lack of inter-agency cooperation in resolving these issues. So in practice, we saw that discrepancies in legal acts impede environmental uses both domestically and in neighboring countries from solving the problem of using secondary raw materials in their sectors of the economy. So to develop effective approaches to regulate the production of waste management system, I would like to propose the creation of expert community comprising scientists, ecologists, lawyers, representatives of non-governmental organizations and the business community of countries of Eurasian Economical Agreement or the countries that are dealing with these territorial regulations. We share a common legal institutional heritage. We have a similar legal system and levels of business process development. Therefore, the creation of such a sectoral association will be the answer to today's challenges that I have mentioned in the first part of my presentation regarding the minimization of waste generation, secondary raw material processing, and the sustainable development of our countries. It should be noted the approaches to concept of waste have been outlined, formed at the legislative level during enforcement and developed by the doctrine of environmental law. And problems in the field of production waste management must be considered comprehensive regulations and should be solved together in a very good and effective collaboration like I suggested. So I think that such an expert community will be the answer to current challenges, and will turn our production waste into benefit, solving the problem of sustainable development for our countries and for our future generation as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Galvin. Some very good points that you've raised there in terms of reworking old industrial waste. Next, I'm going to pass over to Bob Robinson of SLR Consulting. Bob has, lots of years. I'll do a short introduction. Lots of years focusing on energy efficiency and decarbonisation and support of the mining, metals and minerals industries. He's going to talk to us about decarbonisation and energy efficiency in Central Asia.
Thank you. And hopefully I'm aiming for 10 minutes. You can check me as I go along to let me know whether I'm doing 10 minutes or not. Or maybe 11 minutes, you never know. This morning we heard a lot about decarbonisation for supply side. So we'd heard about small nuclear reactors, embedded, large renewable. And we also heard about briefly about green hydrogen. What I'm going to be talking about is really decarbonisation of operating assets, operating and proposed assets. So rather than being supply side, I'm talking about demand side. Quick. Maybe I've got the thing the wrong way around. Oh, can you advance the slides? Is it gone? There we go. So you may well have seen scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. This is fairly common from the from lots of presentations. Important initially to think about what do we mean by scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 as far as mining is concerned. Scope 1, direct emissions, fuel combustion, fleet, explosives, process emissions. And remember, it's not just carbon, it's also other components which you might get from processing. Scope 2, indirect emissions. If you're buying grid electricity, if you're making your own electricity, that's scope 1. And scope 3, which is also important, is third-party emissions. All your contractors, third-party transport, purchased materials, equipment, waste, and disposal. And at the end of this, I'm going to come back to I'm going to show the benefits of doing decarbonisation, but I'll come back to 3 case studies at the end. Just so you know, when you've seen 3 case studies, I've finished. So first of all, why decarbonise? It was commented to me earlier on that mining companies will only decarbonise if they have to. So if it's compulsory that they have to decarbonise, they will do it. Otherwise, don't bother. But there's lots of other benefits as well. First of all, decarbonisation equates to cost. A lot of decarbonisation is reducing energy, water, waste, circular economy, and all of those relate to cost. So first of all, decarbonisation is cost. If you have got carbon tax, then you've got carbon tax savings. And thirdly, on that side, you've got the potential to attract finance. It's much easier to get finance if you've got green credentials. Secondly, there could be grid supply constraints. Although it's been said that there's good grid supply, you've still got to get that supply to your mine. And that constraint can actually stop you from developing your mine and developing processes further. So grid, that's a very important area to look at, particularly for high energy demands in remote areas. And thirdly, customer scope 3. There's lots of companies now who are looking at commitments for carbon, which includes their scope 3. So if one of your customers, then they're going to look at what your scope 1 and scope 2 is. And that's very important for them. So you actually being able to reduce your carbon actually helps you market yourself to clients. And lastly, sustainability agenda. There's lots of interdependency between carbon, energy, water, waste, circular economy, process efficiency, industrial symbiosis, which is something that nobody's mentioned yet, but industrial symbiosis. So first of all, coming up with a decarbonisation strategy. The first part is actually understanding your carbon footprint, having granularity in what you're doing, not just what your total carbon footprint is, but some granularity so you know where the hotspots are, and knowing where you need to make measurements and have metering. Understanding reduction opportunities is very easy, particularly from CEO level and the board level, to come up with, we will reduce our carbon by 5%, but without actually looking to see what the individual opportunities are. So actually understanding what those individual opportunities are is important. Incremental improvements, generally from audits and best practice, include behavioural change, procedural change, minor capital, and then there are also game changers. Game changers are the large projects which have much longer payback. And lots of these will have time-related benefits. It's also useful to look at these benefits against life of mine, life of asset. And to model the reduction strategies. So looking at the mitigation portfolio, which opportunities do I implement? What's the benefit going to be? What's the long-term benefit going to be? Because I know my mineral quantity is going to change, my overburden is going to change, etc. So my efficiency of mining is changing with time. That should be taken into account when you're assessing which opportunities to implement. And it is possible to have a digital twin. Digital twin is the semi-AI version where you model your whole process and whole site. And then from that, you can actually predict what your carbon emissions are going to be. And then to implement and monitor, there's no point having a nice strategy if you don't actually measure whether you're meeting that strategy or not. So it's very important to have those internal carbon measurements. Recommendation is to have an internal carbon cost. It's very difficult to get decarbonisation projects approved on a standard ROI. Standard ROI will be a small number of years. If you have a carbon cost in there, you can actually much easier to actually prioritise carbon projects. So you can actually go along and you can then say, well, I'll have a label to put on it, which is very saleable for your clients, such as SBTI, which is one of the big ones at the moment, CDP, and there's various other ones which you go for as well. So those labels are very useful, particularly for marketing purposes. So as I said, there were 3 case studies, and I think I will make the 10 minutes.
You're on 7 right now.
Yeah, I've got clock going. This first one is a global mining, chemicals and metals company. Mines are located in Brazil, Spain, UK, Israel and China. And there's 37 operating sites across the world. This was a project working with them, actually working on all their physical sites. So actually having people go to the sites, do audits, work with people. And an important part of the project was actually building internal capabilities. So actually doing this knowledge transfer so people could actually do it themselves. There's no point doing a nice study if as soon as you walk away, everything stops. I know that used to be the consultancy method. Find out what people want to hear, charge them lots of money, and then tell them what they want to hear. and make it sound complicated so they got to call you back the following year to do the same thing again. That's not the idea here. The idea is to make it sustainable. This project, as I say, it's working on 37 sites. The measurement of success wasn't what we actually did as far as consultants are concerned. The measurement of success was actually how much savings were made. And it's only incremental savings each year. So if you make savings the first year, you can't count those the second year. And that program was running at roughly $14 million a year, additional saving every year. And that program was run for 10 years. So there's a huge amount of potential saving there. Included within that at the moment, we haven't included at the moment the game changer opportunities. Game changer opportunities include embedded renewables and also include CCU, carbon capture and utilization. So actually taking captured carbon, reacting with green hydrogen and actually making something useful out of the carbon. Second one is an avoided emissions framework. This was looking at a mining equipment supplier. They wanted to be able to go to market to say their products are greener than everyone else's. So actually, it was looking at that carbon reduction within that supplier and actually be able to quantify it to say how they compare with their peers. And the third one was on attracting finance. This was an EBRD project where we're looking to attract finance, but they had to know before they gave the finance, is it actually technically a company that can improve, and is it a good investment? So it was actually looking at decarbonisation potential and what had already been done within decarbonisation for that organisation. 10.5 minutes. I was 34 seconds over. Sorry about that.
I think I did 15 seconds over.
Oh, well, I was timing.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Rob. Appreciate that. To our last speaker of the session, Agatha Slater. She is Director of Solutions Architecture at the Hashgraph Group. She specialises in designing digital solutions for enterprises based on decentralised solutions, and she's going to talk to us about Mine to Market 4.0 digital innovation in raw materials supply chain management. If you can keep it to 10 minutes, that'd be great.
I think I have 15 allocated, so don't cheat me over 5 minutes, but I'll try to stick with as few minutes as possible. And thank you so much to Bob for your talk, because it's a perfect prelude to what I will be talking about. And to everybody, welcome, and thank you very much for hanging in. I know we're all low on energy, so hopefully my topic will spark you up, because I'll be talking about technology and innovation. So my name is Agatha Slater. I'm the Director of Solution Architecture at the Hashgraph Group. We are a Swiss-based company dedicated to building trusted digital infrastructures based on decentralized technologies. Right now, we put a particular focus on ESG and sustainability, and that means that we help companies answer 3 questions. What data do they report? Where does this data come from? And whether it can be trusted. So we work a lot with companies that want to shift from having data to having verifiable, trusted data. And these questions and these topics are becoming particularly relevant to the mining industry. So let's have a look at the big picture. The IEA predicts that by 2040, the demand for critical materials will rise by 4-fold. So this means that the world is asking the mining industry to do 2 things at the same time: produce more and produce better, with lower carbon emissions, better ESG commitment, and better data transparency. And on top of that, we have regulatory pressures coming in. We have upcoming regulations, some of them already in the EU. And I know that on paper, they might seem like it's a European deal and they are not relevant to the Eurasia region, but actually in practice they dictate access to global markets. And all of these regulations have data transparency and verifiability at the forefront. So, as we know, and we've heard plenty about it today, the Eurasian region is sitting on globally strategic resources. It's got growing infrastructure, new projects, market demand and interest from both Europe and Asia. So the companies that will be able to provide better data transparency, provenance, ESG and carbon commitment will potentially gain access to new contracts with European companies, better financing instruments and financial opportunities, and will gain better reputation. And that is the context from Mine to Market 4.0. And I believe that digital technologies are crucial to achieving this. But now let's look at what happens on the ground with data. So the mining industry, as other industries, talks a lot about AI, automation, digital twins, but the everyday reality is a little bit different. A study by Alexandra Holeva, my colleague, who investigated over 60 metal and mining companies, revealed that every single one of these companies reported administrative burden as a daily struggle. 2/3 of these companies said that they still gather ESG related data in spreadsheets. And 65% admitted that the systems that they use for sharing this data with their stakeholders are opaque and not really interoperable. So what does it look like in practice? Let's say we have a copper concentrate shipment that is traveling from a local mine to a smelter in Europe. So most likely we'll have production data sitting in one system. We'll have ESG reports in another system, lab reports in a different system. We'll have some forms that will be printed for truck drivers, some forms filled for, let's say, related to customs, to logistic companies. So by the time that shipment reaches the port, we'll already have 4 to 5 different versions of the same information in circulation. Now add to that a bank that wants to finance this trade, an insurance company that wants to assess the risk, or a stakeholder, a supplier or a reporting entity that wants to verify this data or get access to this for their own CBAM or ESG reporting. This amount of information creates informational chaos, data silos, and a trust gap. And this is becoming a big problem for companies. And as I mentioned before, companies today in the mining industry are judged not just by more and more, not by how much resource they produce, but on the ESG footprint as well. So carbon emissions, water waste, social and security factors. To make this impact count, they must shift from internal data sharing and internal reporting to externally verifiable data in a digital format. And this is where digital product passports become essential. A digital product passport is a digital story about a product or a resource that travels with it across the entire supply chain. It can contain any type of data about how that resource was extracted, mined, processed, transported, all the way to how it re-entered the value chain. What's important is that the data in a digital product passport is linked together, preventing these informational chaos and data silos that we often see. So from a digital perspective, it is a register of various data points collected in the process and aligned chronologically. But from a user perspective, it is merely a QR code or a link that can be opened and accessed by an external verifier who sees what data was reported, its timestamp, so when it was reported, and its cryptographic digital footprint to show that this data has not been tampered with. On top of that, digital product passports also alleviate employees from a lot of that administrative burden. So there is no more need to look for spreadsheets, making sure that everybody has access to the same version of information. So from this perspective, digital product passports are a shared reference frame for the entire supply chain. Now, how do we introduce these digital product passports so we don't tear apart the entire existing IT infrastructure of a company? At the Hashgraph Group, we have created a platform. It's called EcoGuard for issuance and integration of digital product passports. So basically, every time data enters the system, EcoGuard asks 3 questions about it. When was it issued? Who or what issued it? Because a lot of that data comes from IoT infrastructure. And whether this person or a device was authorized to do so. And over time, this data is formed into a chain of evidence that underpins a digital product passport. What makes our approach unique is perhaps 2 things. One is that the technology that underpins this digital product passport is decentralized, meaning that it is pretty much impossible to hack. So it's very secure. And secondly, that we never store or own this data. It is entirely under the ownership of the company that created it. So the data, you still keep control over that data, but you gain the ability to prove the integrity of this data to others. And I'll give you an example of a recent project that we have conducted where we issued this digital product passport. This is not directly coming from the mining industry. It's the producer of green ammonia. The company is a big green ammonia producer from Africa, and right now they're preparing for the CBAM reporting, and they want to certify their green ammonia as green. So there were 3 different challenges related to this project. First of all, to prove the amount of renewable energy in the production of green ammonia. Secondly, to capture the data from the plant on a near real-time basis. And 3, to make sure that the final product, so the green ammonia, matches the standards dictated by the EU. So we connected EcoGuard to the existing IoT infrastructure, smart meters, and the integrated plant systems, so that the renewable energy data, the energy consumption data, and plant operations were processed through EcoGuard. So when an external verifier came in to view this data via a dedicated dashboard, they could certify the ammonia based on evidence and not some manual spreadsheets or that were in circulation. So that product, the green ammonia, now has a digital product passport attached to it that reliably proves its ESG and carbon footprint. What's important as well is that we don't only see these projects as from a compliance perspective, but we believe that they really open up opportunities for new business to unlock new value. It was mentioned before today that we're seeing the emergence of a premium market emerging for products that come with that verifiable data footprint. And this value can be unlocked in at least 3 different ways. First, through access to new contracts. And Bob mentioned that before, and it was mentioned throughout the day, that many companies, for example, OEMs, are looking for suppliers that they can trust, that comes from that evidence of how was this data produced, especially when this data relates to ESG and sustainability. So that opens up opportunities for higher value, longer term contracts. Secondly, financial institutions, it was also mentioned before, offer lower interest rates and better financial instruments to companies that can verify their data because it correlates with lower risk. And last but not least, we're seeing the emergence of entirely new revenue streams based or built on that verified data. For example, through tokenized carbon credits that can be sold and unlock entirely new business opportunities. And we estimate that even a low adoption at about 5% of these verified data methods can lead to the unlocking of millions, if not billions, in new value. That comes from new contracts, better financing, and entirely new products or business models that can be opened up. Now, I know that these projects sound complicated, and I deal with companies that have this fear or anxiety because they don't know where to start. They feel that they're not ready, that they're not digital enough, that this is still something that does not relate to them. So we help companies lower that entry barrier through an innovation program that we run. And we run pilot projects that we fund through our in-kind engineering that help companies create their first verified data projects, for example, through digital product passports. And they last about 6 months. So these projects are divided into a few stages. A discovery stage where we sit down and define with a company what they would like to achieve, how this digital product passport could look like. A design phase where we build solution architecture based on our existing technologies such as EcoGuard. And a build phase where we put this technology to life in a real environment with real data. So in the end, after 6 months, you can have a digital product passport prototype that suits the needs of your organization. And as I mentioned, we have funding available to help companies adopt that. And we would like to start launching first digital product passports in the Eurasia region to prove that the region can deliver not only on the quantity of the resource, but also on the quality of data and on trust, because trust is becoming the real currency in the mining industry and in other industries. And with the right digital tools, this trust can be designed, verified, and converted into value. Thank you very much. I'm ready to discuss things further, and you can also add me on LinkedIn, and we can continue this conversation on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Agatha, and thank you very much for keeping to time. It's fantastic. So that's the end of the presentations. We're moving on to a panel session, but as we're a bit short for time, I was just going to ask Megan Farrell of Central Asia Metals whether she'd like to join me up here, and we can have a discussion on how Central Asia Metals in Kazakhstan are operating environmentally responsibly. So I'm very familiar with CAML's excellent environmental credentials at your project in Macedonia. I don't know so much about the Kazakhstan operation, so I was just wondering, Megan, whether you could give a little bit of information on how you're producing your copper at Kunrad in a way that supports responsible mining.
And I think it's quite fitting for kind of the talks we've had in this session. So at the Kunrad operation in Kazakhstan, it's not your typical open pit mine or underground mine. We're producing copper from in situ leaching, but of waste rock dumps. So the dumps are already existing. They are overburdened from a historical open pit mine. That means because it's in situ leaching, we don't have the emissions associated with haulage, blasting, etc. And our operation in itself is capturing the copper, which would historically leach into the environment over time. We're generating revenue from waste, as was discussed during the first talk of the session. So responsible mining across CAML, so the same as at SASA, our operation in Macedonia. But for us, responsible mining means a strong focus on governance, health and safety, environmental stewardship and management, our people and our employees. And this is something that we focus on in Kazakhstan and in Macedonia. So we, from an impact perspective and environmental risk, we undertake impact assessments looking at social and environmental risks throughout all steps of the life cycle. So from planning all the way to looking at closure and those aspects. But as well as that, we undertake continuous monitoring of air quality, water, and the various different parameters associated with environment, as well as wider parameters such as kind of social performance and other indicators in reporting and sustainability data. We are guilty. We do still collect it in Excel. Is an area that, we have to focus on, and it is challenging. Particularly then when you look at kind of the scope 3 emissions as well. It will be
excellent. Yeah, no. Thank you very much, Megan. And I really see that, particularly in the Sasa operation, where you're really a beacon company for taking on proper environmental ownership responsibility. It's not just a tick box exercise. I see it from the top of the company right the way through to the guys on the ground, that you really take this seriously. Coming back to sort of Bob's presentation a bit, how can you bring decarbonisation into the Kounrad or even the Sasa operation?
It's an interesting one, particularly because our operations are so different. So CAML, as a group, Central Asia Metals, we have two kind of long-term objectives when it comes to our decarbonisation journey. So one is to reduce our scope 1 and 2 emissions by 50% by 2030, and our longer-term target is net zero by 2050. As of last year, the end of last year, we are 44% of the way compared to our base year. And that is largely due to a power purchase agreement in Macedonia. So that's purchasing green energy from our energy supplier. The operation in Kazakhstan is slightly different, largely because the energy supplied by the grid is coal-based. Where we are is relatively, I wouldn't say it's kind of, we're near Balkhash, the city, so there's a big city there. But from an infrastructure perspective, we're kind of limited to what we can use because it's what's available within the region. So, and also from a...
It's interesting. We do a lot of work in Kazakhstan, obviously, and I noticed near Aktagai, there's large numbers of wind turbines have sprung up since the time I've been travelling there over the last 5 or 6 years. There's now a forest of renewables available. Is there anything in that in your region?
So this is what we've been looking at. So we have built a solar power plant. So we have a 4.7 megawatt solar farm, which last year supplied around 14% of the Kounrad operations energy use. And so that's a nice kind of easier one to tick off. Where we have the harder challenges are scope 1 emissions. And that's because where we operate, it can get very, very cold out on the steppe, particularly on our dumps during the winter months. Yeah. And so in order to allow our operation to continue during those cold months, we heat our solution to stop it from freezing. And we do that through coal boilers. So we use coal. So one of the things we started looking at initially when we developed our decarbonisation strategy was the use of alternative fuels. And interestingly for us, because of where we're located and the infrastructure that we already have, we looked at using pellets, biofuels. Could we have gas instead? And actually, it's not really feasible given the life of our operation and the other kind of factors. So what we've said is, okay, we've got coal boilers, we're going to use them. Let's do it and improve efficiency wherever possible. So we've fitted temperature sensors at the ends of all of our dripper pipes for the winter blocks. And we've done that in order to optimize the solution. Just enough so it doesn't freeze, but not overheating. So we can kind of, depending on how cold it is that day, use more or less coal. So it's not an exact science. It's hard to get the percentage saving because it depends on how cold that winter was compared to the other winters. But that's kind of our strategy that we've used. So that and the solar farm.
Oh, thanks very much, Ray. I can vouch personally for standing on top of waste dumps in Kazakhstan when it's -30, -40 is not a fun place to be. So maybe if anybody's got any questions for either of the previous speakers while we're here, got anything to add?
Yep. Hi, Megan. Steve McRobbie from IG Asia. I know the operation you've got there at Conrad very well, and it's a really top-notch operation you're running there. One sort of question I've got, an observation is, I mean, you're obviously right on top of the old Conrad mine there, and I assume that there's an environmental protection zone, i.e. legacies from Kazakh myths and historical tailings and environmental issues from that. How do you separate your environmental monitoring and managing program from what Kazakh myths are and should be doing?
Yeah. It's an interesting one, and actually Kazakh myths still own the open pit and do still have some operations there, as well as the dumps around where Kumrad are. There's different kind of legislative permits that apply. A lot of it comes down to historical baseline. So prior to the operation, as part of the initial assessment, a lot of work has been done to assess what is the historical baseline and to set the kind of the standard that, okay, this is what's there already. And as you say, it's a challenging area because these waste rock dumps have been there for a long time. There's already been leaching into the environment. So really establishing that baseline and agreeing with kind of, the relevant regulators that this is the baseline we'll work to is the key thing we can do. And it's also about improving things. So when we're looking at closure planning, it's, okay, yes, there are legacy issues here, but what can we do to kind of mitigate that towards the future and looking into closure? But it's a challenge. It's the same with groundwater, moving around, etc. You've got the open pit and how these things work together. So it's not an exact clear-cut answer, I'm afraid, but you can only do what's available.
Thank you. Any other questions before we close this session? No. Okay. Thank you very much, speakers. Thank you very much, Megan. And I'll pass you on to session 6, turning brine into value. Thank you.